going through a portal to
Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about microphone basics. There are two major kind of microphones. I say major because there are other kinds. We're just going to be talking about these two. So the first one is the dynamic microphone. The dynamic microphone works like this. You are speaking in a room, or you are in a room with noise, and you have a microphone on you. The dynamic microphone has what's called a diaphragm. And so as this diaphragm moves, it will move and correspond according to how much sound pressure hits it. So when you speak and create acoustic sound pressure, sound waves, when they hit the diaphragm, it's going to move. So the more you speak, the louder things are, the more the diaphragm will move. Okay, so we've got a corresponding mechanical movement. Now we have transformed our sound pressure into mechanical vibrations. What we then do is we attach a coil that is it's got to be made of the right stuff. But anyways, you can attach a coil to the diaphragm of the mic. So when the diaphragm moves, it moves this coil with it. The coil is electrically conductive. And so I'm trying to keep it really simple. So basically there is a magnetic field inside of this microphone. And when you have a coil moving in a magnetic field, it will induce a current in that coil. And this is the speakers work the exact opposite way. So you can actually use your speakers as a microphone. Anyways, it will induce a current in the coil, and the coil will then and now you've got an electrical signal that is a corresponding form to the sound pressure. So you have a diaphragm, you speak, it moves, transforms it into mechanical energy. It then moves through a magnetic field because there's a coil attached to it. That coil moving, and the more movement it is, the more electrical conduction will happen, will cause a current to be induced. And the more current that's induced, the louder things were. It's representing the change in all these different, we've gone through a couple forms of energy. Now we've got an electrical output and a signal and a wire of some kind like I have here. So basically, now let's talk about, before we get to condenser mics. So that's dynamic mics in a nutshell. There's a couple of things. Dynamics aren't as great at transient response typically because they have to move a diaphragm. And transient means a spike in audio. So if you went up to a snare drum and went wham and you hit a snare drum, it'd be a very, very fast spike in audio. Well, that diaphragm mechanically has to move. And so that's an issue sometimes for microphones. And so you might want to go with a condenser microphone that has a much lighter material. It doesn't have to move as much. So people will like condenser microphones for voices and things like that. And they'll like dynamic microphones for this is ironically, this is a snare mic. It's like the snare mic because there's also differences in how rugged the mics are. And they sound great. I mean, you can do microphone comparisons and maybe you'll find out that you like the way a particular dynamic microphone sounds against a particular condenser microphone. You know, they vary according to the make of each piece of gear. So it's really interesting doing microphone shootouts. So let's talk about, because you've probably been marketed for some really cheap microphones, right? What are the differences? Well, the differences are mostly acoustic. They are, don't buy USB mics, okay? If you're gonna be recording music, buy real mics with XLR outputs. So let's really quick talk about that, then we'll get to the whole differences in quality thing. So here we've got a XLR cable, and I'm pointing this out because you guys might not know what this is. And what it is it's a balanced line connection, or a balanced connection. People will commonly call them mic cables, but they don't have to be used on microphones. Basically, they have three prongs, and one of the prongs is for ground, another one is for ground, one is for signal, the first signal, and then one's for another signal. So it's two signals plus ground is what they'll say. And you can actually build one. Like I built one for like $6 and I could have made it like 50 feet long or whatever. It doesn't matter. And that's a big deal. The way this works is now I'm going to assume you know what phase is if you don't know what that is, go check out my Sound and Synth Basics phase video. Just look it up on my playlist on my YouTube channel. You will find the one. Check out the ones about phase because you need to know what phase is. So what it'll do is now this is a gear that does this. Then nothing in the cable is magic, okay? You could send signals down each one of these lines and it'll be fine. It's the way the gear interacts with it. So this is something the gear will do. And so if your gear doesn't work, if someone's messed with your gear, you could have problems. But no one should have messed with your gear, right? You keep good care of your gear. So basically what happens is it sends the signal through the cable on one connection. So one connection receives it. One connection is ground. So it's ground. We're not going to talk about that. So it goes through that cable. The other connector receives a phase inverted version of that signal. So basically when the signals are traveling through the cable, they are phase inverted, so they cancel each other out and it's perfectly silent, right? Now you might be saying, how do we get our signal back if it's perfectly silent? Well, we do this because when the signals are here and they're traveling through a wire, they are subject to interference, electrical interference, buzzing, radio signals, all sorts of things noise can get added to your cable. Now, this is an issue with really long cable runs, okay? So you can have XLRs that are like 1,000 feet long. Like you can do that. You can't do that with a single conductor unless it's got some really good shielding on it. And so that's the big difference between like instrument cables and, balanced. And that's why you want to use balanced if you can. Speaker wires are a different story because the amount of voltage, the pressure in those wires is so high that it is not subject to as much interference. And you should try and keep those wires as short as possible. You don't want them super long, because then you could get noise and stuff. So so we have our signal, it's coming down, it's phase inverted, and we'll go to your interface, and your interface happens to be a differential amplifier, meaning it will take that phase inverted signal and it will unphase invert it. So now you've got your regular signal and your phase inverted signal. It's been unphase inverted, so now they sum together. But while your signal was traveling down that wire, you had noise added to it. And when you flip the polarity, now the noise is phase inverted. So let's just back up and say it one more time. Signal comes in. It gets sent down the microphone cable. One is sent normal. The other is sent phase inverted. So it's flipped. So if this was up, this is down. So it's 0. Why we are doing this, we add noise, right? So the noise is in phase with itself. So we have this up, down, this up, and this down is our signal. And the fingers, my thumbs, represent the noise. So the noise, as you can see, is both pointing up, so it's in phase. It hits a differential amplifier, which flips one of the signals. So now we have our music, our audio's in phase, but I can't flip my thumb upside down, but if I could, I would. The noise that was added while it was in the wire has been phase inverted, so now it's canceled, and now we are good to go. So basically, that's why you want an XLR, is it's got advantages big time for stuff like that. Okay, so now let's talk about, now if you get an instrument cable, it doesn't have that, but it's got a great deal of shielding, and there's different types of shields and all these cool things that you could look into, and that's basically what the big difference between a speaker cable and an instrument cable. I had a guy at a music store when I was new sell me a freaking speaker cable because it was cheaper than an instrument cable, because he's like, oh yeah, it's like the same thing. No, it's not. It's not the same thing. I had so much buzzing from that, and I didn't know anything at the time, and so I just got duped, and so I've still got that freaking cable. Oh man. Ooh. But yeah, don't trust instrument people at Guitar Center. No, this was Sam Ash, not Guitar Center. Maybe Guitar Center's cool. I think they'll know a lot more, to be honest. But the Sam Ash people, ooh. So anyways, yes. So we've got that sorted. That's why you want that. That's why you want an XLR. USB will have a digital to audio converter. And so that's a whole separate deal. And again, I just don't do that. If you're going to do podcasts and stuff, might be a great way to go, but not for this. So now we're going to move on and get to condenser. Now, I don't have a condenser with an XLR on me right now. I've got a condenser with an SD card. So it records directly to digital inside of itself. This is a Zoom H2. It's great for field recordings. And the way a condenser mic works is, and we'll talk about the qualities between them in a second, like why buy one over the other, why some are cheaper than others. So there are two plates in here, and they form a capacitance between them. The front plate moves. It responds to sound pressure. As it moves, it changes the distance between the plates, changing the capacitance, changing the voltage, so now we've got a variable voltage that we then take, and we have our electrical signal output. Now, this is really great because it can give you different pickup patterns. Cardioids are are just that. I mean, not cardioids. Dynamic microphones are cardioids. What does that mean? Well, they pick up in front and they have some side rejection, but not too much. And then the rear rejection is the best part. And there's all these different types of polar patterns. So the way your microphone picks up sound. Well, in a condenser microphone, if you buy a good one, not to say that ones that are fixed are bad, but generally, if you have because sometimes they're made for specialized purposes, like live sound or whatever. But you could see I could change my pickup pattern on this microphone to be omni, meaning all the way around. I can have it be a figure eight, so only the front and the back. And I could do a cardioid, so it's just the front. And this is a big deal if you're, of course, a recording artist. And the 414 microphone is a great mic because it has that flexibility and it sounds really good. And it's a condenser microphone and it has an XLR output and everything. You'll see that in pretty much every studio you work at too. So that is the big difference between condensers and now these, of course, because the plate is made of a much lighter material, it can move a lot faster. So it captures all the nuance of a voice. However, some microphones like the what is that called? I know it's the RE20, the Electro Voice. The Electro Voice RE20 is very famous for its sound for broadcasting and for it gives that deep low end voice. As I move farther away from the microphone, you notice my voice becomes less deep, and as I get closer, it gets a lot deeper, more present, full, and that's because it's called the proximity effect. Something that whenever something's in a cardioid pattern, meaning a front pickup, we have some interesting acoustics that go on. We're not going to get into that, but basically when you choose a mic and you're going to buy a microphone, you might be wondering, well, how do I buy a good one? Like this one's only $100, and then you'll see other microphones like the RE20 that cost $520. Well, it's somewhere in the 500 range usually. So what's the big difference? Now, if I had a microphone that I could use for tutorials, it would be the RE20. I'm telling you right now because they sound freaking cool. But putting that aside, you can go off rep. You can go off the instrument manufacturer. However, so that's not always the best deal because sometimes they have crappy mics that are like low budget, and then they have expensive mics. Like Audio-Technica has some pretty cool high-end mics, but they've also got some pretty junky low-end mics. And the main issue is the acoustic design and the way the electronics within it itself. The Shure SM57 is just a staple in the audio industry. Like if you're going to buy a mic that you want to be solid and very, very, very durable, then buy one of these. There's condenser mics can break easier because they have those plates and there's a few more parts, so they're more likely to fall apart. This is very rugged. There's not too many parts, so it's pretty safe on the road and stuff. Now, there's another type of mic called a ribbon mic, and there's actually a few more, but we're not going to talk about those. And those can be very, very touchy, very sensitive. If I was once moving a Coles 4038. I believe that's the number. Anyways, I was moving a Coles ribbon microphone, and you have to hold it against your chest when you're walking. At least that's what I was told when I was doing it, because they're really expensive microphones. So whatever the guy who owns them tells you to do, that's what you do. And they're really heavy too. So you're moving it, and they don't want wind to hit the ribbon because it's very easily damaged and it's so expensive. So ribbon microphones are usually pretty touchy. So you want to be careful when you're dealing with ribbons. And there's this thing called phantom power. So some microphones like condensers take phantom power. Now this one uses batteries. So that's how that works. And there's actually two kinds. There's an electric condenser, and then there's just like your regular condenser. We're going to ignore that for now. Basically, condenser microphones need additional power to properly give charges to the plates so that when they move, the capacitance is sensitive to the movements of the plates. And so what you do is on your audio interface, or I have one right here, you'll typically have a 40 volt button. You see that button that says 48 volts on it? That will give 48 volts of power to my microphones. Now, some microphones, like a lot of ribbon microphones, is a bad deal. You don't want to do that. You'll destroy the microphone. But for condenser microphones, it needs that extra power to really work. And that's another reason why you need XLRs. XLRs will, besides batteries, XLRs can take that and they'll split it across both channels. Because it's even across both channels, when it reaches the mic, I don't know exactly how phantom power works. I used to know at one time. Basically, it sends it down the mic line cable, and when it gets there, it will the phantom power will power your microphone. It's that easy. They've combined it into the same cable. So it's really a nifty way of doing things. That's another reason why you want XLR. Now, another thing about mics, just real quick, is you're going to see these charts like frequency response and stuff. And I cover some of this stuff in my Sound and Synth Basics. But you want to be careful about those charts because they can misrepresent things, but also you want to be aware of how a microphone deals with off-axis noise. So as you see here, as I turn, I start getting side rejection. But the thing is, a microphone, like if I were to go all the way around the side, I'm talking from over here, I sound really different than if I'm talking from over here. Now, some microphones that are like $50, like a $50 condenser, you might be like, holy crap, it's so great. But then you got to consider, what are the components? How is it made out of? Is it durable? Who's the manufacturer to more or less extent? And then you say, all right, well, and just to be real, besides the Shure SM57, there's a couple other cheaper ones, but generally you're going to be spending over $500 for a microphone, like easy. The really nice ones are like a couple $1,000s. So a 414 is $1,000. It's like a really solid mic if you can, save up the cash and get it. So the way it deals with this off-axis noise is important, and that's a big deal about the microphone design. It's also a big deal about speakers, their design, how they work, why they're the shape they are, where the holes are, all that stuff. It's really important for acoustics. And so sometimes a really cheap microphone will sound really great at one application, but it will suck at a variety of other applications. So you want to be aware of like how versatile is this mic when you're buying a mic. That's one big reason why some are cheaper than others. So you might need it for like vocals, and you plan to always sing into the mic from that direction that it was made to be sung into from, then it might always sound great. But if you want to change something, you might be less than happy with the results. And it's really interesting to do a mic shootout on something like this because they add these subtle textures, and that could sometimes make a world of difference in your recording. You could add that warmth to it. Now, we didn't talk about things like solid state and tube. Tube is old. So just so you know, if you run into a tube mic and you can afford it, like a genuine one, not a fake one, you should probably get it. It's really, those are really cool. Tubes have particular sounds to them. So we have a couple at the school studio that I go to right now, and they sound really nice. But solid state's pretty much it because it's more effective, it lasts longer, it's smaller. But because it's like in audio, we don't necessarily care about how fancy or effective something is. Technically, we care about how it sounds. So tubes have a sound to them, and they're very sought after for that sound because they're kind of older. All those old recordings, if you want to sound like that, you're going to need, a good tube mic. And so it's just the way life is. If you have any questions about microphones, let me know. I think I've pretty well laid it out for you, at least the basics. I know I didn't talk about pressure zone mics or ribbon mics very much, and I sort of brushed over a variety of topics, but I just want you to know, so when you go and buy a microphone, you're not a freaking moron when you buy one, because the first time I went to go buy a mic, I didn't know what I was buying. I just knew that microphones record sound, and that was it. And so I was buying this microphone. I didn't know what an audio interface was. And so this guy hands me a microphone, and I'm like, how do you get the sound into it? You do not want to be me. Don't be me. No. So now you're going to be safe when you go and buy your microphone, okay? Because I literally just was like some guy who did a lot of stuff with FL, and then I was like, I want to learn how to record signals. And now I laugh at that because that was a really long time ago. I can't believe I even asked that question. Embarrassing, because I did have this microphone, and so I thought, you push record and then all microphones have this magic record button that you record into, but these don't have the record. How do you get the sound into it? I was like baffled by this, and ironically I already had an audio interface, but I didn't know what that was or what it did. I just wound up with it out of luck. So then I was like, oh, I've already got this thing, and then I had to learn all about that. But now it's like funny because it's hilarious. So if you have any questions, let me know, subscribe, and have a blessed day. How do you use limiters on individual channels? I'm going to sort of just spitball a number of concepts at you, assuming that you know what compression is and a number of other things. And then the other question was, what do you use for your stereo processing? So I'm going to try and answer these kind of fast. They will be answered later on in future series to come on. But the short answer to your first question is you do not use limiters on individual